we can't beat
Let's ask an influential Democrat in the United States Senate. Chris Coons is joining us on the phone right now. He serves on the Judiciary Committee. What do you think now that this report is out, now that that Robert Mueller himself, a man you know, has concluded there was no collusion? Is it time for the Democrats to curtail or at least step back from all these other investigations?
Well, if I don't think that should lead us to the conclusion that other investigations into misconduct by the Trump organization, the Trump campaign, the Trump inauguration are invalid or should be curtailed. Frankly, if anything, I think the fact that the special counsel refused to reach a conclusion one way or the other about whether President Trump committed obstruction of justice means that more than ever we have a responsibility to get access to those materials and to conduct a thorough review of it. I'll remind you, Special Counsel Mueller and Congress have different charges. Mueller's charge was very narrow, and frankly, I think it is a good thing that, Mueller did not conclude that our president conspired with a hostile power in the conduct of his campaign. But Mueller's report, at least the summary that we've gotten from Barr, leaves wide open both the question of obstruction and I think makes it clear that other investigations should proceed. I'll remind you, the Mueller investigation led to 37 indictments and a series of guilty pleas and convictions, including the president's campaign manager, national security advisor, and personal attorney. It's hard for me to see how that is a complete exoneration. It strongly suggests that at the most senior levels, folks in the Trump campaign had a whole series of inappropriate contacts with Russians and then lied about it. If there was nothing for them to hide, why did they do so much lying and misrepresenting? And why do that to the extent that you've now got a half dozen senior people with convictions or guilty pleas? I do think I have trusted all along that Special Counsel Mueller would conduct a fair investigation. And I look forward to getting access to the report and investigatory materials so that we in Congress can do our job and make sure we know what were the troubling facts that Mueller uncovered and that led him to decline to reach a conclusion about obstruction.
You're absolutely right. He said the president was not completely exonerated on the issue of obstruction, but he also said, and the report quotes Mueller, a man you greatly admire, as saying this, quote, this is from Mueller, the investigation did not establish that members of the Trump campaign conspired or coordinated with the Russian government in its election interference activities. That's a hard and fast statement.
That's right. That's how I read it, and I think that's a significant conclusion. But given the open question about obstruction, I still think Congress needs to have access to the full report.
So are you ready to say, Senator, that there was no collusion?
I want to see the full report because at the very least, the Trump campaign at the highest levels had unprecedented and inappropriate contacts with the Russians. But I do think it is a good thing for the country if the Mueller investigation concluded that our president didn't directly conspire with a hostile foreign power.
It wasn't just the president. Bill Barr was quoting from Mueller himself saying there was no collusion, there was no coordination, no conspiracy between the Trump campaign. That means others, too, besides the president and the Russian government in these illegal, in Russia's election interference activities. I guess the bottom line is, do you still have complete confidence in Robert Mueller?
I see nothing that would undermine my confidence, even though this is a striking result. And I think, there was abundant evidence or suggestions of high-level, frequent, and inappropriate contacts with Russians in the conduct of the Trump campaign. But I think Robert Mueller is a career professional in law enforcement and someone who I have no reason to doubt or question.
And specifically on this whole point, when he says there was no collusion, the president goes way beyond that and say no collusion, no obstruction. But the president also said we just heard him say that this whole investigation was an illegal takedown that failed. That's the president's words. And he said it was a shame that the United States had to go through this. It was a shame, he said, that he had to go through this. And he felt badly for all these individuals who have already been charged and convicted, potentially hinting at a possible series of pardons. What's your response?
I could not more strongly disagree. I don't think it was a shame that the country had to go through this. I think, if anything, it shows our commitment to the rule of law, that no one, including the president, is above the law. Frankly, I think the president would have been well served not to have spent so much time in the last year criticizing, critiquing, harassing Robert Mueller and his investigators. He would have been better served to simply let it play out, as his own attorneys initially advised him. And I do think the president may be claiming complete exoneration, but the folks who have had to plead guilty or who have been convicted, I think, speak loudly otherwise.
And the president clearly feels sorry, feels sad about those individuals. So I don't think any of us should be surprised if eventually, at some point down the road, people